Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here. I want to thank Congressman Langevin, Lieutenant Governor McKee, and Mayor Elorza for joining me today. More than 500,000 Americans have now died in this pandemic, including more than 2,500 right here in our state. Millions have lost their jobs, small businesses here in Rhode Island, and of course our country have been forced to close. There's no other way to put it that this virus has wreaked havoc on our country and has created an economic crisis and a public health crisis for families all across America, including right here in Rhode Island. Democrats won the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives because we promised to deliver the relief the American people needed. And today we're here to report that help is on the way. The President's American Rescue Plan, which the House passed early Saturday morning, delivers $1.9 trillion and leverages the full force of the federal government to take on this crisis, with $20 billion to create a national vaccine program and $50 billion for testing so we can crush this virus once and for all. Here in Rhode Island, it will provide nearly $1.7 billion in new money for our state and local governments to keep frontline workers on the job as we roll out the vaccine and build back our economy. More than $1.1 billion goes to state government, with the rest going to municipalities, and as an example, the city of Providence will receive $132 million. As we move forward, it's critical that every level of government, federal, state, and local, work closely together, and I know that all of us are committed to doing that. In addition, this package provides another round of survival checks, $422 billion in total, to put money directly in the pockets of working people. Last summer, the first round of stimulus payments provided roughly $900 million to 560,000 Rhode Islanders. This round will be more generous because it includes benefits for adult dependents. And so a family of 4 under the income threshold would receive $5,600. 76,000 Rhode Islanders received federal supplemental unemployment benefits last week. This bill extends those benefits through August and raises the federal benefit from $300 per week to $400 per week. We're also slated to receive $437 million to help K-12 schools open safely and to address the impact of the pandemic on the well-being of students. Another $180 million will be provided to our colleges and universities, at least half of which has to go directly to students who are at risk of going hungry or homeless as a result of the pandemic. The bill also includes $93 million for childcare here in Rhode Island, so more working moms and dads can get back to their office or back to work when it's safe to do so, and $3 million for kids and families in Head Start. This measure also provides $7.25 billion in Paycheck Protection Program funding and allocates additional funds for economic injury disaster loan advances, EIDL loans. Both of these have been really vital lifelines for our state and particularly our small businesses, and have provided $2.6 billion for businesses and nonprofits through more than 28,000 loans and grants in 2020. The legislation also includes $25 billion in direct aid set aside just for restaurants and bars that have been especially hard hit in the pandemic. Even before the pandemic hit, 146,000 Rhode Island households were struggling to make their monthly housing payments. And that's why it's so important that this bill includes an estimated $152 million for emergency rental assistance to Rhode Island and an estimated $40 million to the state through the Homeowner Assistance Fund. Finally, this bill also gives minimum wage earners their first pay raise in more than a decade, a move that will benefit more than 100,000 Rhode Islanders. More than 1 out of every 5 workers in our state will get a raise through the increase in the minimum wage. Many of these people have stayed on the job over the past year as essential workers. We cannot call them essential if we do not honor their work with a living wage, and this bill does just that. This past year, I think, has tried all of us in many different ways, in ways that we never anticipated. I want to acknowledge the people of Rhode Island who have risen to meet this challenge. Every day I hear from people all across our state who want to know what they can do to help others right now. I particularly want to extend a special note of gratitude to our healthcare workers, our first responders, the hardworking men and women in our grocery stores and pharmacies, our school teachers and administrators, and our state and municipal employees, all of whom have courageously kept our state and communities strong and really have demonstrated tremendous commitment to their work during this unprecedented crisis. We fought for passage of the rescue plan so you would have every possible resource to do your job, to keep our state healthy and on track to recover and to return home safely to your families and loved ones each and every day after your shift has concluded. But we owe you all an incredible debt of gratitude, so thank you. In many ways, I think this crisis has revealed the character of our state and the people of Rhode Island. All they want in return is for Washington to do its part and to get them the relief that they need right now. And that's why we all hope the Senate will move quickly to pass this bill and send it to President Biden's desk for his signature. And rest assured, we will do everything we can to make sure that that does in fact happen. And so we're here to say the House has passed this incredibly important relief package that will make a real difference in the lives of Rhode Islanders, will help us rebuild our economy, keep us safe, and crush the virus. And now it's time for the Senate to move quickly and for President Biden to sign his own American Rescue Plan. And with that, I'll now introduce my colleague, my senior colleague in the House, Congressman Langevin.
Good afternoon, everyone. David, thank you, and couldn't agree with more with you in your comments. It's time to get this bill through the Senate and now onto the President's desk for his signature. The American Rescue Plan is going to make a tremendous difference in the lives of every Rhode Islander and every person across this country. It truly is an American Rescue Plan, and it couldn't come at a more vital and critical time. I want to begin where David left off and recognizing, thank you all of our frontline healthcare workers who continue to rise to the challenge of keeping Rhode Islanders safe each and every day, like the heroes who have been working here and just right next door to either test, to vaccinate, or to treat people that were in the convention centers and overflow as an alternate site where people had to go to be cared for. I know it's standby mode right now, but it's just a moment to recognize all of our frontline healthcare workers for extraordinary work that they are doing. I want to thank my colleague, Congressman David Cicilline, for the introduction and for his partnership in the House of Representatives as we represent Rhode Island in the House and work together to get this bill across the finish line to truly, again, rescue both the American people and the people of Rhode Island. I am deeply appreciative of his partnership, again, in helping to ensure that Rhode Islanders get their fair share of federal resources to keep people safe, help struggling families, revitalize our communities, and support those who are on the front lines. Let me also recognize the next governor of the state of Rhode Island, Dan McKee, who's about to take the reins of the governor's office, and I look forward to our continued friendship and partnership that we've enjoyed over these many years. You have a lot on your shoulders, Governor. We look forward to making sure that you have everything you need to be able to succeed on behalf of the people of our state. Let me also recognize Mayor Elorza. Thank you for being here today. As David mentioned early Saturday morning, the House passed important legislation to implement President Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan. It does exactly what Jay Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, have called for in going big. Janet Yellen, former chair of the Federal Reserve, now Treasury Secretary, who outlined that it is more dangerous to do too little right now than it is to do too much. Joe Biden has heard that call. The House of Representatives has joined within that partnership in going big in passing this $1.9 trillion aid package, and now it's up to the Senate, and I have confidence that the Senate, along with Senator Reid, Senator Whitehouse, will get this bill across the finish line and get it on the President's desk. The crisis we face requires bold response, and Americans simply cannot wait any longer. We need to get money in their pockets with $1,400 relief payments and extended unemployment benefits, provide and aid and to keep food on their tables and roofs over their heads, and so much more. My friends, too many working families right now are struggling to make ends meet through no fault of their own, and it's vital that we get cash assistance into their hands to help them to cover the essentials, and we will. The additional $1,400 following the $600 down payments that we had already provided at the beginning of the year, I know will make a tremendous difference. To beat the virus, this package will allow us to do more robust testing and get more shots into the arms of Rhode Islanders. We also need to make sure that our schools, from our students to educators, have the support necessary to succeed as we begin to safely reopen. Democrats have been consistent throughout this pandemic that, again, it is more dangerous for Congress to do too little than for us to do too much. So if we don't act with urgency, we risk a slower, more challenging recovery. High unemployment remains a challenge, and it will continue to remain a challenge unless we act. That's why this bill could not come at a more timely moment. Rent and bills are obviously due. Families are hungry, small business owners are worried about their future, and they need assistance now. So we answered their call to help by passing the American Rescue Plan, and I certainly look forward to the new Democratic majority in the Senate moving swiftly to pass this measure to deliver the aid that our constituents so desperately need. The more than $1.7 billion in aid for our state will become as a result of this $1.9 trillion package being passed. That $1.7 billion for Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island, cities and towns are going to help keep essential workers like first responders employed and ensure critical services continue. Because the alternative would have been that there would have potentially have been significant layoffs of frontline healthcare workers or police and fire. We cannot allow that to happen, and this bill make sure that it will not. Additional funding will help local authorities carry out the testing and vaccination efforts that will save lives and keep more Rhode Islanders out of the grip of this terrible virus. Hundreds of millions in aid will also help families with childcare, support early childhood learning, as well as offer a critical boost to schools and universities. And as we look towards the future, this relief aid will help rebuild our communities and make them more resilient. So with that, without a doubt, we're seeing progress in our fight against COVID, but obviously more work remains yet to be done, and we're ready to continue this fight to do whatever we can to make sure that we get the right resources into the right hands at the right time. I know my colleagues, again, Senator Jack Reed and Senator Charlotte Whitehouse, are going to work diligently to get this bill passed. We look forward to working with them to get it across the finish line and onto the President's desk. And with that, it is now, I just want to take a moment in closing to once again recognize the men and women across the state who work day in and day out through this entire crisis to provide the care that they have been providing to protect Rhode Islanders, make sure that they have what they need as they get through this virus. Heroes from all walks of life, from the National Guard to EMTs to CNAs to nurses and doctors and others who are on the front lines, including people even in our grocery stores, our frontline workers in grocery stores, have been working tirelessly to provide support, to test and now vaccinate our community members. So we are forever indebted to you, and I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all of those frontline healthcare workers. So with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce the next governor of the state of Rhode Island, David McKee, who will share some words on how critical it is that the Senate pass the American Rescue Plan and get it under the President's desk for him to sign it to law. My brother.
Yeah, Congressman, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We're here today on the one-year anniversary of the first COVID case in Rhode Island. And beyond the tragic loss of life, this pandemic has caused extraordinary economic hardship. Small businesses are struggling. Families are trying to make ends meet. And all across Rhode Island, people are facing economic challenges like never before. Here in Rhode Island, we're working to get Rhode Islanders back to work. We're working to get our schools reopened and our small businesses back in business. And we're working tirelessly to get shots in the arms as quickly as possible. And I'd like to take a moment, to thank, to recognize Governor Raimondo for her leadership during this time frame, and the handoff that is coming this week, as Congressman Langevin said, that our job is to get this issue across the finish line. but we need support from our leaders in Washington to make that happen. And that's why I'd like to thank Congressman David Cicilline, Congressman Jim Langevin, who voted on Friday to give the states the support that we need. Now we need the Senate to pass President Biden's American Rescue Plan. And you've heard what this bill can do, and I think it bears repeating. The numbers are extraordinary, and they're going to help our state and our local municipalities. With this bill, President Biden will deliver on the promise of $1,400 checks for those making under $75,000 and every family making under $150,000. This money will help families catch up, and these dollars will be spent in our local communities, at our local businesses. Second, we know that we are going to recover from COVID-19. We have to expand vaccinations. The American Rescue Plan will spend $7.5 billion to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to help distribute vaccines throughout the country, and another $7.5 billion to FEMA to establish more vaccination sites. Third, it brings much needed revenue to Rhode Island at a time when our state government and our cities and towns are facing potential budget deficits. Very timely, Congressman, both of you, that we're heavy. I'll be leaving this meeting to go into another 2 or 3 hour meeting on our budget, and this information is very timely. It's going to be very helpful to the state in that process and also the local communities. I know that Mayor Elorza and mayors around the state are looking forward to help that the American Rescue Plan can bring to communities, all 39 cities and towns, and right here in the city of Providence. And fourth, the American Rescue Plan recognizes small businesses are essential to helping our economy recover. And I would just put another point out to all the small businesses that are under 20. This is a time frame that have less than 20 employees. This is a time frame to use the PPP loans to an advantage, and we need to make sure that we get that in every community that we need to reach out to. So throughout this pandemic, my office has worked to help small business owners access funding that they need to survive. That's why I'm glad that the American Rescue Plan is ready with help. $7.25 billion in additional funding for the Paycheck Protection Program, $15 billion in COVID-19 emergency grants through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and $25 billion to create new small business programs to help restaurants and bars. Since we're here at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and I'll be here tomorrow to get my shot, my wife Susan and Susan went online, as we're encouraging everybody to do, and made a reservation, and I'll be here tomorrow right after noontime having my shot with my wife Susan. But being here at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, I have to say, America runs on small businesses. So does Rhode Island. Let's get this plan passed so we can get our businesses the help they need. Finally, the American Rescue Plan will help us continue to reopen schools. And I've said last week, Rhode Island has been slow to get a program for our schools. These dollars are going to help us get kids back in the classrooms and get our teachers safely in the classrooms. And we'll help come up with a plan very shortly that will address that issue in a way that hopefully we salvage some of this school year, but definitely get our students in our classrooms by September. We've lost so much learning time during this pandemic, and we're going to do all we can to get students back on track. The American Rescue Plan has $130 billion for schools that can help us pay for ventilation systems, PPE, and hiring support staff to care for students' health and well-being. And the American Rescue Plan is the right plan to get us back to a normalcy. We need the United States Senate to act. We know Senator Whitehouse and Senator Reid are ready. Let's send this bill to the President Biden's desk and get our country moving again. And I would also give a shout out to everybody, as I said, with both Governor Raimondo, her team, and all the first responders in the state of Rhode Island that have given up so much to keep us safe. With that, I will hand it over to Providence Mayor Elorza. Mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to begin by thanking Lieutenant Governor, soon-to-be Governor McKee. You know, you're stepping into this role in such a challenging time, and you know, I think that from our federal delegation, but certainly from myself, you know, we're here as partners to help our community get to the other side of this crisis. So, thank you for your leadership on this and stepping in and hitting the ground running. I also want to recognize the senior congressman from Rhode Island. Thank you, Congressman Langevin, for always fighting the good fight and being on the right side of the issues and representing us so well in Washington. We thank you for your leadership. And in particular, I want to recognize Congressman Cicilline. Congressman, you truly have made us so proud as a state, whether it's helping to pass the recovery bill, whether it's passing the Equality Act, or whether it is defending our democracy. You know, I thank you for everything that you do to represent us in Washington. You know, we're at such a critical point right now. On the one hand, there's hope. Hope is on the horizon. We know that the vaccine is finally here, and now it's just a matter of getting as many shots into people's arms as possible. But the challenge is we have to get to the other side and bring as much of our community along with us. And that's what the American Rescue Plan gives me hope for. It gives us the resources to get as many of our folks to that other side. As has been mentioned, we're still fighting this vaccine. It allows us to not only continue with the expanded testing, but have the resources to effectively reach everybody in the state that needs to be vaccinated. And in particular, help us reach those hard-to-reach communities that certainly require extra energy and effort to reach. As the Lieutenant Governor just mentioned, we're also in the midst of and in the need of an economic recovery. Whether it's putting dollars directly into people's hands, as this will do, or whether it's providing more supports for our small businesses that have been clinging to life for months on end. If we can get them to the other side, we're going to be better off, and that's exactly what this bill helps accomplish. And then finally, as has been mentioned, our kids have lost so much learning over the past 10 months, and this bill will allow us to get them back into school quicker than otherwise, and on top of that, invest in all of the recovery learning that they've lost so that they can hit the ground running next September with hopefully not having missed a step. So this bill will allow us to get to the other side, but on top of that, it allows us to make investments for the world that awaits us on the other side. We know that throughout the pandemic, a number of divisions in our society have been made very clear, whether it's economic divisions, social divisions, or racial divisions. We know that there are investments that we need to make in our community because going back to the normal of before just isn't going to be enough. And with the flexible dollars that this will bring to our state and to our cities throughout, it puts the dollars directly into the hands of the people that are connected with our residents and are most attuned to our folks' needs throughout our communities. So for all of these reasons, it's vital that the Senate pass the American Rescue Bill as quickly as possible so we can get on with getting to the other side and building the kind of world and society that we want on that other side. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it back to Congressman Cicilline.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you again, Lieutenant Governor, Governor McKee, and my colleague, Congressman Langevin. We're happy to take some few questions.
Congressman, how would you assess this bill's passage in the Senate?
I think it's a near certainty. Obviously, our two senators have been strong proponents of this rescue package because we are using the reconciliation process. Despite the best efforts, both in the House and by the President, to bring Republicans along in this process, they did not support it in the House, but the reconciliation process allows us to go forward with a simple majority in the Senate, which means we can pass the bill at the House passed.
And the lack of the minimum wage? I mean, it's in your bill.
It's in the House bill. We think it's really important. It's an important priority for the House Democrats. You know, people haven't gotten an increase in minimum wage in a very long time. It will mean 27 million Americans will get a pay raise, one that's long overdue. We think anyone who works full-time in this country should not live in poverty. So we included the minimum wage. The Senate parliamentarian has ruled that it cannot be part of the reconciliation process. I leave it up to the Senate to figure out what they do about that. But if they decide to pass it without that, then they'll send it back to us for us to have to repass it absent the minimum wage.
Congressman, is there anything else?
That the Democrats control both houses of Congress now and the White House as well, but the vote appears to be that it wasn't the House, basically along party lines. Does it concern you that you're really not getting any bipartisan buy-in on
well,
such a big
the bill is wildly bipartisan. It's supported by over 75% of the American people, Democrats, Republicans, and independent. So it's very bipartisan. The legislation is, the president worked hard to bring, as did we, Congressman Langevin and I, to bring along some of our Republican colleagues. But in the end, the president made it clear, and the House Democrats made it clear, we're going to pass a bill that responds to the gravity of the economic crisis and the public health crisis that will crush the virus and help rebuild our economy. And all the economists, all the serious economists have all said what Congressman Langevin mentioned, that we have to, the danger is to do something too small, that we could delay our recovery by a generation if we don't do this right. So we are prepared to move forward alone if we have to. We welcome Republican support, particularly if it comes back again, but we have a responsibility to respond to the urgent challenges that this pandemic has presented, both in terms of our economics and in terms of public health. That does it. So it's a fully bipartisan bill. The fact that Republicans didn't vote for it, it's supported by Republicans, Democrats, and independents. There's few pieces of legislation that go through Congress that have the support of 75% of the American public.
Yeah, let me just say that I know that President Biden has not given up on the hope and the possibility of getting a bipartisan bill through the Senate. But he's also made clear that that issue is not going to stop us from passing the American Rescue Plan. We are going to pass a rescue plan. We'd like to have it with bipartisan support. The door is open to do that. But we are going to get this bill across the finish line one way or the other. Congressman, what are the biggest issues you're besides minimum wage that are points of contention in this bill, as far as Republicans or Democrats who are opposed? In terms of tension, there's very little. Some have argued that the amount is too much, and maybe that's on the Republican side have said that $1.9 trillion may be too generous. I completely disagree and reject that premise, because you listen to some of the top economists in the world talk about how we need to go big and be bold right now. When you have a strong, clear statements from the chair of the Federal Reserve, who's generally pretty reserved, saying to the Speaker of the House, for example, we've heard the quote, "Go big, Madam Speaker." The interest rates at historic lows right now. We can pass a bill that we can ultimately afford to pay for, because it's an investment in the American people, an investment in our economy that's going to yield benefits. Janet Yellen, again, as I pointed out, former chair of the Federal Reserve, current Treasury Secretary, says we need to be bold and go big. So look, there's no two ways about it. We have to win this war on COVID by crushing the virus on the health side, but we also need to confront the economic challenges that COVID has thrust upon us and that are incredible burden. We are going to be in a recession, no two ways about it, because of unfortunately because of COVID. The question is, and as economists have said, is it going to be a shallow and short recession, or is it going to be wide and deep? We are arguing that we can achieve the former, a very short and shallow recession, as opposed to the other way around by passing this bill.
Governor, first of all, do you expect to be sworn in tomorrow?
Well, I expect to be sworn in. It'll be up to the Senate in terms of the confirmation process, but it appears as though that's going to happen this week.
And do you think that what's in this bill as it passed the House would cure what ails Rhode Island's budget and what faces the municipalities ahead?
I think it's going to be a big, big help, and that, I've said publicly, as people were saying, are you going to raise taxes to, overcome the problem? I've been saying, look, let's see what happens on the federal side. This is welcome news, as I said before, for Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin's leadership. I'm happy to be here today to recognize that. And it will help. It's going to help our municipalities significantly, as well as the state.
Any plans that you have with the money? Have you thought about that at all?
I think we just want to make sure that we invest it wisely and make sure we take this opportunity, because I think there is an opportunity with this many dollars coming into the state to invest in our schools, invest in our small businesses, and invest in our safety, right, in our public safety.
You've been meeting with a lot of municipality leaders. Have you spoken with them about how they can use the funds in their local communities?
Well, I think that, and I've mentioned this to both congressmen earlier, is that we want to make sure that the monies that are allocated to the state to the cities and towns gets directly to the cities and towns, and they don't get watered down by a state budget. So the idea is to get those dollars in whole to those cities and towns, and then the cities and towns are going to know how to invest those dollars in a way. And we'll certainly, again, I believe that a state's function is to provide guidance and provide resources, and then follow the lead of the local communities in terms of how to best use these resources.
What have you learned from the past?
Can I just add one thing about the city, and Governor McKee will appreciate this, having been a mayor. This was an issue of real contention in our negotiations with the Republicans. If you remember, we tried to pass a similar bill called the HEROES Act, and we called it the HEROES Act because it was intended to protect the heroes on the front line of the pandemic. Our police officers, firefighters, frontline workers, first responders, teachers, to be sure that in the middle of a pandemic they wouldn't face layoffs because municipalities and communities were facing revenue shortfalls. So in this bill, we fought hard to be sure that money went directly to cities and towns, no matter their size. So what the governor described actually can happen. It goes directly to the communities to help mitigate the consequences of this public health and economic crisis, as well as the state obviously getting a significant appropriation. But we did that because local communities are facing some revenue shortfalls, they're facing increased costs in responding to the pandemic, they're seeing a decline in business revenues, businesses that are closing and the property taxes that are associated with that. So this is really about making local communities whole, but also giving them the tools to help rebuild the economy, which is a critical part of our kind of post-COVID recovery.
Absolutely.
We can take one more, because we have to catch a flight.
Mayor Elorza, what will you use the money for here in Providence?
So I want to underscore what Congressman Cicilline just said. You know, one of the structural challenges that we have is that in moments when there's the greatest need on city resources is when we have the fewest resources. And so these dollars coming to our city and directly to our state and directly to our cities is really a lifeline. It allows us to carry on all of our normal operations. It allows us to respond to the pandemic with vaccines and testing. But it will also allow us to make investments, and I'll give an example. This is just one thing that we're considering. We know that when the pandemic began, the small businesses that were able to pivot and adjust to the new reality were the ones that were already connected to online marketplaces. You know, take restaurants, they had online ordering, they had, you know, online reservations. They were just able to pivot so much easier. And I know that so many of our small businesses throughout the community, they just don't have the wherewithal, they don't have the capacity, the technology. And so that's the kind of investment that we want to make, making it so that our businesses are better able to respond to the current needs, but it's also setting up the foundation for the world that awaits us on the other side.
There's also, before I close it, there's a detailed summary of the bill. For those that didn't take good notes, Annie has it. Be sure you grab one of those. Thank you all.